The ancient stone walls of Dorchester Castle stood like silent sentinels against the October mist, their gray facades darkened by centuries of rain and sorrow. Princess Aendor pressed her pale fingers against the cold glass of her chamber window, watching as carriages rolled through the main gates, bringing nobles from every corner of the kingdom to the grand harvest ball. She was 20 years old with cascading black curls that fell like midnight silk down her back and eyes the color of warm amber. The only warmth, some whispered, in a castle that felt increasingly like a gilded cage. Tonight, she would be officially betrothed to Duke Geoffrey of Wexham, a man twice her age with lands rich in wheat and gold, but poor in anything resembling affection. "Your Highness, we must prepare you," said Lady Margaret, her lady-in-waiting, entering with an armful of crimson velvet. "Your father expects perfection tonight." Ian turned from the window, her expression carefully neutral. She had perfected that mask over 20 years. The obedient daughter, the studious princess, the light of the throne, never a complaint, never a desire, are beyond duty. "Of course," she replied softly, "I shall not disappoint him." As the sun descended behind the hills, casting long shadows through the castle corridors, Aveline was transformed into a vision of royal elegance. Her gown was deep burgundy, embroidered with golden thread that caught the candle light. Her black curls were arranged in elaborate braids woven with pearls. Around her neck rested the ruby of Elder Gate, a family heirloom said to protect against dark forces. The great hall blazed with hundreds of candles, their flames dancing across tapestries depicting ancient battles and forgotten saints. Musicians played from the gallery, filling the stone chamber with melodies that echoed off vaulted ceilings. Lords and ladies in their finest silks and velvets swirled across the floor like colorful birds. King Edmund Roman III sat upon his throne, a man whose broad shoulders still carried the weight of a warrior, though silver now streaked his beard. Beside him, the empty chair that had belonged to Aline's mother, dead these 10 years from fever, remained as a reminder of loss. "My daughter," the king called as Aveline descended the grand staircase. "Come, Duke Geoffrey awaits to claim his dance." The duke stepped forward, a portly man with thinning hair and fingers adorned with too many rings. He smiled, but his eyes were calculating, measuring her worth like one might appraise livestock. Aveline curtsied gracefully, extending her hand. As the duke led her to the dance floor, she felt the familiar numbness settle over her heart. This was her fate. This was duty. The music swelled. They began to dance. And then the wind outside suddenly ceased. The candles flickered, their flames bending as if bowing to some unseen force. A collective hush fell over the hall. Even the musicians' hands faltered on their instruments. The massive oak door swung open. A figure stood in the entrance, silhouetted against the darkness beyond. The mist seemed to follow him inside, curling around his boots like living creatures. As he stepped into the candlelight, gasps rippled through the crowd. He was tall, imposing, with shoulders that spoke of both elegance and raw power. His hair was short and golden, catching the light like spun sunlight despite the late hour, a stark contrast to the black cloak that swept behind him like night itself. But it was his eyes that stopped hearts, pale crystalline blue, sharp as winter frost, with a predatory intensity that made seasoned warriors instinctively reach for swords that weren't there. His face was beautiful in the way ancient marble is beautiful. Cold, perfect, timeless high cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips that curved into something between a smile and a warning. On his chest, belly visible beneath the black velvet of his doublet, was a silver brooch shaped like a wolf's head. Lord Mikhail Vyulov announced the herald, his voice trembling slightly, of the Brinsmere Wall, envoy from the Eastern Territories. The name rippled through the hall in urgent whispers. Brinsmere, the fortress at the edge of the known world, where the maps ended and rumors began. A place spoken of in taverns with lowered voices, where the sun refused to shine, where men who entered were never seen again, where something ancient ruled from towers of black stone. King Edmund rose from his throne, his expression carefully neutral despite the tension in his jaw. "Lord Vyulov, we received word of your coming. You honor us with your presence." Mikhail moved through the hall like a wolf through sheep. The crowd parted instinctively, nobility pressing back against the walls. His footsteps were silent on the stone floor, impossibly silent for a man of his size. "Your Majesty," Mael's voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent that spoke of distant lands and older tongues. "I bring greetings from the Eastern March. Your invitation to discuss the northern threat was most gracious." Aveline felt Duke Geoffrey's grip tighten on her waist, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were locked on the stranger. There was something about him, something that called to a part of her she didn't know existed. When his gaze swept across the room and found hers, she felt the world tilt. For a moment that stretched into eternity, they stared at each other. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and something flickered across his perfect features. Surprise, recognition, hunger. Aveline's breath caught. Her heart, which had beat so calmly her entire life, suddenly hammered against her ribs. Mail crossed the floor directly toward her. Duke Geoffrey stepped back, his face re-enning with indignation, but something in the stranger's presence made protest die on his lips. "Your Highness," Mail said, bowing with old-world grace before Aveline. Up close, she could see that his skin was pale, almost luminescent in the candlelight, and cold seemed to radiate from him like winter fog. "Forgive my boldness, but tradition demands that a visitor honor the royal house with a dance. Would you grant me this privilege?" His eyes held hers. In their crystalline depths, she saw centuries' pain, power, an endless winter of loneliness. Every instinct of propriety told her to refuse. Duke Geoffrey stood right there. Her father watched from his throne. The entire court held its breath, but Aveline felt something crack inside the perfect shell she'd built around herself, something wild and desperate and alive. "I would be honored, Lord Vilov," she heard herself say. His smile was slow, dangerous, beautiful. "The honor," he murmured, taking her hand, "is entirely mine." The moment his fingers touched hers, ice shot through her veins. Not painful, but shocking in its intensity. His hand was cold, impossibly cold, like marble pulled from winter snow. Yet where his skin met hers, something sparked, something that felt like recognition, like two pieces of a puzzle finding their match after centuries apart. The musicians, at a gesture from the king, began to play a slower melody. Mikhail led her to the center of the floor, and the crowd fell back even further, forming a wide circle around them. As they began to dance, Aveline was acutely aware of every eye in the hall watching them, judging, whispering, but she was more aware of him. "You're cold," she whispered as they moved together. "Are you ill, my lord?" His laugh was soft, almost sad. "Not ill, princess. Merely cursed with a condition that makes warmth a distant memory. Where do you come from truly? Brinsmere is spoken of only in legends. Some legends," he said, his eyes never leaving hers, "are rooted in truth. My home lies beyond the Carpathian passes, where winter reigns eternal and the old laws still hold power. Old laws, laws older than Christianity, older than Rome, laws written in blood and shadow." A shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with his cold touch. "Should I be afraid of you?" she asked. Mikhail's expression shifted, something raw and honest breaking through. "Yes," he said quietly. "You should run from me as far and as fast as you can. I am everything you have been taught to fear. Then why do I feel safer in your arms than I have in all my years in this castle?" His steps faltered almost imperceptibly. For a creature of such grace, it was a tell more powerful than words. Because he said, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, "Your soul recognizes what your mind has not yet understood." The dance ended, the music faded. They stood in the center of the hall, hands still joined, while the court watched in scandalized silence. "Thank you, your highness," Mikhail said formally, bowing once more. But as he released her hand, his thumb traced a gentle line across her palm, a secret gesture that made her breath catch. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows at the edge of the hall. Aveline stood frozen, her heart pounding, her hands still tingling where he touched her. Duke Geoffrey approached, his face thunderous. "Your Highness, I must protest." But Aveline didn't hear him. Her eyes searched the darkness where Mikhail had vanished. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that her carefully ordered life had just shattered beyond repair. From the shadows unseen by the court, Mael watched her, his hands clenched at his sides. After 500 years of darkness, of endless night, of blood and survival, he had finally found his light, and God helped them both. The following days passed like a fever dream for Aveline. She performed her duties with mechanical precision, attending morning prayers in the chapel, receiving lessons in Latin from Father Benedict, embroidering with her ladies in waiting. But her mind wandered constantly to that night, to those ice-blue eyes. that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed facade. Lord Mikhail Vyulov had taken residence in the East Tower, the oldest part of Dorchester Castle. It was a peculiar choice, one that raised eyebrows among the court. The East Tower was drafty, dark, its windows facing away from the morning sun. Most guests preferred the warmer western chambers, but Mikhail had insisted with a politeness that borked no argument. "He keeps strange hours," whispered Lady Margaret as she brushed Aline's hair 3 nights after the ball. "The servants say his chambers remain dark all day. No candles lit until sunset, and the food they bring him, he barely touches it." Aveline's reflection in the mirror remained composed, but her pulse quickened. Perhaps he is merely recovering from his long journey. The Eastern Territories are far. Cook says she found the pheasant she prepared for him untouched. Completely untouched, but his wine goblet was drained. Every drop. Margaret lowered her voice to barely a whisper. Strange wine, too. Dark as blood, thick as Margaret. Aveline interrupted gently but firmly. "We should not spread gossip about our guest," he said. But that night, as Aline lay in her canopied bed, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The cold touch of his hand, the way the candles had flickered when he entered, the predatory grace of his movements, the centuries she had seen in his eyes, laws written in blood and shadow. What had he meant? Unable to sleep, Aline rose and wrapped herself in a heavy velvet robe. The castle was silent, save for the distant footsteps of night guards and the whisper of wind through ancient stones. She moved to her window and looked out over the moonlit gardens below. And there, walking among the hedgerows like a ghost, was his golden hair gleamed silver in the moonlight, and his black cloak billowed behind him as he moved with that same impossible grace. He stopped suddenly as if sensing her gaze and looked up directly at her window. Even from this distance, she could see the glow of his eyes like ice reflecting moonlight, luminescent and utterly inhuman. Her breath caught. She should step back, draw the curtains, return to bed like a proper princess. Instead, she found herself descending the spiral staircase, her bare feet silent on cold stone. She moved through empty corridors like a woman possessed, past sleeping servants and dozing guards until she reached the door that led to the gardens. The night air was cold, turning her breath to mist. Frost had begun to form on the grass, unusual for October. The moon hung full and heavy in the sky, casting everything in shades of silver and shadow. "You should not be here, princess." His voice came from behind her, smooth and dark as midnight wine. She turned to find him standing in the shadow of an ancient oak, his pale eyes fixed on her with an intensity that should have frightened her. "Neither should you, my lord," she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "The gardens are locked at night." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Locks are suggestions to men like me. What kind of men are you, Lord Vyulov?" He stepped forward into the moonlight, and Aveline's breath caught. He was even more striking in the moon's pale glow. His features sharp and perfect, his skin luminescent, his golden hair almost white. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Those crystalline predator's eyes that seemed to glow with their own internal light. "A dangerous one," he said quietly. "One you should fear. One you should run from. You said that before." Avine took a step closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. "Yet here I am, and here you are. If you were truly dangerous, why warn me?" Because he paused, something like pain crossing his perfect features. "Because for 500 years I have taken what I wanted without question or conscience. I have been monster, predator, lord of darkness. But you," his voice dropped to barely a whisper, "you make me want to be something I haven't been in centuries. Human. 500 years. Ian's mind reeled. That's impossible. No man lives. I am not a man. Ian." The use of her name spoken without her title sent shivers through her. It was intimate, forbidden, dangerous. "Then what are you?" Mael's jaw tightened. Around them the temperature seemed to drop further. Frost spread across the grass in patterns like reaching fingers. "Do you know the old stories, princess? The ones your priests call superstition, the tales of creatures that walk in eternal night, that thirst for the blood of the living, that cannot face the holy cross or the light of day." Ian's heart hammered in her chest. "Vampires," she whispered. "You speak of vampires, creatures from folk tales meant to frighten children. Folk tales," his laugh was bitter. "Is that what we've become? Once we were worshipped as gods, then feared as demons. Now merely stories to scare the young." He turned his gaze to the moon. "I was born in 789, princess. born human in the forests of what you call Russia. I was a warrior, a lord, a husband once. I had a daughter." His voice cracked slightly on that last word. "What happened?" Aveline asked softly. "War, famine, and a woman who promised eternal life in exchange for eternal service." His eyes returned to hers, and in them she saw 5 centuries of accumulated sorrow. She was ancient even then, a creature old as Christianity itself. She turned me during a battle, made me her general, made me immortal, made me monster, and your family dead before I rose 3 days later, all of them. When I clawed my way from the grave, my village was ashes, his hands clenched. The woman who made me told me it was mercy, that I would thank her for sparing me the pain of watching them age and die. She was wrong. The pain never fades. It merely accumulates. Ian felt tears prick her eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. It was ice cold, hard as marble, but when their skin connected, she felt that same spark, that recognition. Kael stared at their joined hands as if witnessing a miracle. "You're not afraid," he said wonderingly. "I should be," Aveline admitted. "Every lesson, every prayer, every sermon has taught me that creatures like you are abominations, soulless predators, servants of Satan. They're not wrong. Then why?" She stepped closer, looking up into those ancient, tormented eyes. "Do I see more soul in you than in any man my father's court has offered me?" Aline, her name was a prayer on his lips. Don't look at me like I'm salvation. I am damnation. I have killed. I have fed on innocence. I have done things that would make you weep. Have you killed since coming here?" He hesitated. "No. Do you want to kill me, God? No." The words were torn from him. "You are the first thing in 500 years that has made me want to live rather than simply exist." "Then teach me," Aveline said suddenly. "Teach me about your world, about the darkness, about what you are." "Why?" "Because I have spent 20 years being the perfect princess. The obedient daughter, the light of the throne, and I am suffocating." Her voice grew passionate because you looked at me and saw me. Not the crown, not the bloodline, not the political alliance. You saw me. Kael closed his eyes as if in pain. When he opened them again, they glowed brighter, and Ian saw his canine teeth had lengthened into sharp fangs. "This is what I am," he said, his voice rougher. "This is the monster beneath the gentleman's mask. My kind feed on human blood to survive. We are stronger than 10 men, faster than wolves. Silver burns us. Holy symbols cause us pain. Sunlight would turn me to ash within moments. We are everything your God teaches you to destroy." Aveline reached up and gently touched his face. His skin was smooth, cold, perfect. "You're also the first person who has ever been honest with me." He caught her hand, his grip careful despite his obvious strength. "This cannot end well. Nothing in my life has ended well, my lord. I am promised to a man I don't love. I will bear children for political alliance. I will die having never lived, at least with you. At least this moment is mine." Something broke in Mael's expression. He pulled her hand to his lips and kissed her palm, a gentle gesture that belied his predatory nature. His lips were cold, but the kiss burned. "Then I will give you what moments I can," he whispered against her skin. "Before your father discovers us, before the church condemns us, before reality tears us apart." "Tomorrow night?" she asked. "Tomorrow night," he agreed. "And every night until fate intervenes." As Aline returned to her chambers, her heart racing and her hand still tingling from his kiss, she didn't see the figure watching from the shadows of the castle walls. Father Benedict, the king's confessor, stood with his hand on his silver cross, his face twisted with righteous horror. He had heard everything. If you're enjoying the story, leave a like, a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to reply. Father Benedict's footsteps echoed through the stone corridors as he made his way to King Edmund's private chambers. Dawn was still hours away, but the matter could not wait. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with righteous fury. In his 60 years serving God and crown, he had witnessed many sins, but this was an abomination that threatened the very soul of the kingdom. He found the king in his study, reviewing military reports by candlelight. Edmund looked up, his weathered face creasing with concern at the priest's expression. "Father Benedict, what troubles bring you at this hour? Your Majesty." The priest's voice shook with controlled emotion. "I bring news that will pain you greatly. Your daughter, Princess Aline, I witnessed her in the gardens tonight with the creature from the East Tower." Edmund's hand stilled on the parchment. "Creature, the one who calls himself Lord Vilov." Father Benedict stepped closer, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Sire, I heard their conversation. He confessed to her what he truly is. A vampire, an undead abomination, a servant of darkness who has walked this earth for 500 years, sustained by human blood." The king's face went white, then red with barely suppressed rage. "You are certain of this?" "I heard it from his own lips. He spoke of being turned in the year 789, of drinking blood, of burning in sunlight. And your daughter, God forgive her innocence, did not flee. She touched him, your majesty, willingly." The parchment crumpled in Edmund's fist. For a long moment he was silent, the only sound the crackling of fire in the hearth. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "Summon the guard captain quietly, and fetch Father Dominic from the cathedral. We will need the church's most experienced exorcist." He stood, his hand moving to the sword that hung on the wall, the blade that had seen him through 20 years of war. "If this demon has touched my daughter, he will burn for it. And the princess sire," Edmund's jaw tightened, "she will be confined to her chambers until this evil is purged from our walls. We will say she is taken ill. No one must know of this shame." In her chambers, Aveline lay sleepless, staring at the canopy above her bed. Her mind replayed every moment in the garden, the cold touch of Mikey's hand, the sorrow in his ancient eyes, the fangs that had emerged as proof of his nature. She should be terrified. Every teaching of her life screamed that she had conversed with pure evil, yet all she could think about was the loneliness she had seen in him. 500 years of existence, centuries of accumulated grief, the weight of immortality pressing down on him like a stone. "You are the first thing in 500 years that has made me want to live rather than simply exist." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Lady Margaret entered, her face pale and drawn. "Your Highness, your father requests your presence immediately." Something in Margaret's tone made Aveline's heart sink. She rose and dressed quickly, her hands steady despite the dread building in her chest. As she walked through the corridors, she noticed armed guards posted at intervals, far more than usual. She found her father in the throne room, still dressed in his night clothes, but wearing his crown and sword. Father Benedict stood beside him along with another priest. She didn't recognize, a gaunt man with fevered eyes who clutched a silver crucifix like a weapon. "Father." Ian's voice was calm, but her heart raced. "Aline." The king's voice was cold, devoid of the warmth she had known all her life. "I will ask you once, and I expect the truth. Did you meet with Lord Villeneuve in the gardens last night?" She could lie. Every instinct of self-preservation screamed at her to lie, but she was done with lying. Done with being the perfect, obedient daughter who sacrificed her truth for appearances. "Yes, father, I did." The king's face hardened. "And did this creature reveal to you his true nature?" "He told me what he is, if that's what you are asking." "And you did not flee, did not call for guards, did not scream for protection from this undead monster?" Ian lifted her chin, her amber eyes meeting her father's with newfound defiance. "No, I did not." Father Benedict gasped. The strange priest began muttering prayers in Latin, sprinkling holy water in her direction. "You condemn yourself with your own words," Edmund said, his voice breaking slightly. "This demon has corrupted you, bewitched you. He has done nothing of the sort." Ian's voice rang out, startling everyone. She had never raised her voice to her father in her life. "He has been honest with me, which is more than any man in this court has ever been. You speak of corruption. You would marry me to Duke Geoffrey, a man who keeps 3 mistresses and beats his servants. You would trade me like livestock for political alliance. Where is the righteousness in that silence?" The king's roar echoed off stone walls. "I am your father and your king. You will obey. I will not." The words came out steady, final. "Not in this." For a moment, father and daughter stared at each other across a chasm that had opened between them. Then, "You leave me no choice." Edmund's voice was heavy with grief and rage. "You will be confined to your chambers until this madness passes. Father Dominic will perform the necessary rituals to free you from whatever dark influence has taken hold of your soul." "There is no dark influence." Guards. 4 armed men entered at the king's command. "Escort Princess Aveline to her chambers. She is not to leave for any reason. Post men at her door day and night." As the guards moved to take her arms, Aveline spoke with quiet intensity. "What will you do to him?" "The creature will be destroyed," Father Dominic said, his voice like grinding stones. "At first light we will drag him from his lair and expose him to God's holy sun. His ashes will be scattered and his name forgotten." "No," Aveline struggled against the guard's grip. "Father, please take her away," Edmund commanded, turning his back. "I cannot bear to look at her." As Evelyn was dragged from the throne room, her mind raced. Sunrise was perhaps 3 hours away. 3 hours to warn Kael, 3 hours to save him. The guards locked her in her chambers. She heard them take position outside her door, heard the bolt slide home. She was trapped, or was she? Avine moved to her window. Below the wall dropped 30 FT to the stone courtyard, impossible to climb down. But beside her window, perhaps 10 FT away, was another window leading to the abandoned solar that connected to the old servants' passages. She had explored those passages as a child before her mother died, and her father decided princesses should remain in proper chambers. Without allowing herself time to reconsider, Avine tore strips from her bed sheets and tied them together. Her hands worked with surprising steadiness as she secured one end to her heavy bed post and tested the knot. It would have to hold. She hitched up her nightgown, said a quick prayer to a god who might not approve of what she was doing, and climbed out the window. The night air bit at her skin. The makeshift rope burned her palms as she lowered herself down. Wind whipped around the castle walls, making her spin slowly. Don't look down. Don't think. Just move. Her feet found the window sill of the solar. She pushed against the ancient glass, and mercifully it gave way. She tumbled inside, scraping her knees on the stone floor. No time for pain. She raced through the darkness, her bare feet silent on dusty floors. The servants' passages were narrow, cobwebbed, but muscle memory guided her through the maze. She emerged into a hallway on the opposite side of the castle from her chambers. The east tower loomed before her. She climbed the spiral stairs 2 at a time, her breath coming in gasps. At the top, she found Kael's door, heavy oak bound with iron. She pounded on it with both fists. Kael, wake up." The door opened so suddenly she nearly fell forward. Kael caught her, his ice-cold hands steadying her. His eyes widened at the sight of her, barefoot in her nightgown, bleeding from scraped knees and rope-burned palms. "Aveline, what?" "They know," she gasped out. "Father Benedict heard us last night. They're coming at dawn to drag you into the sunlight. You have to run now." His face went utterly still. "Your father knows what I am." "Yes, and he means to kill you." She grabbed his arms, feeling the marble-hard muscle beneath his shirt. "Please, Kael, you have to flee." He stared at her for a long moment, those predator's eyes searching her face. Then, surprisingly, he smiled, sad and beautiful and full of ancient sorrow. "I have spent 500 years running from sunlight, from hunters, from those who would destroy me. I am weary of running, Aline. You can't just let them kill you, can't I?" He reached up and gently touched her face, his cold fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "I told you make me want to live, but what life can we have? You are a princess. I am a monster. Your father will never accept me. The church will hunt me until I am ash. And you," his voice broke, "you will be destroyed simply for having known me." "I don't care," Aveline said fiercely. "Let them condemn me. Let them lock me away. At least I will have lived. At least I will have chosen." Kael's eyes blazed with sudden intensity. "You would give up everything. Your crown, your comfort, your future, for truth, for choice, for you." She met his gaze without flinching. "Yes." He pulled her to him suddenly, crushing her against his chest. She felt his coldness seep through her thin nightgown, but also something else. The faintest flutter beneath his ribs. A heartbeat, slow and faint but present. "Then we run," he whispered against her hair. "Together I know places where even your father's reach cannot find us. Ancient fortresses, cities of night. We can disappear. Take me with you." Aveline breathed. "Take me away from this cage." Mael pulled back, his hands gripping her shoulders. "You must understand what you're choosing. Life with me means darkness. Eternal night. You would never see sunlight again, never walk in daylight. Never, I choose you," she interrupted, "whatever that means." In the distance, a bell began to toll. The pre-dawn bell. 1 hour until sunrise. "Then we must go," Miguel said urgently. Now he moved with supernatural speed, gathering a few belongings into a leather satchel. From a locked chest, he withdrew a silver dagger and a vial of dark liquid. "What is that?" Ian asked. "My blood," he said quietly. "If you are injured beyond healing, 3 drops will save you. More than that," he paused. "More than that will begin your transformation. Do you understand?" She nodded, unable to speak. They descended the tower stairs together, Mikuel's hand gripping hers. They moved through shadows, avoiding guards until they reached the stables. Kael's horse was magnificent, a black stallion with eyes that gleamed with unnatural intelligence. His name is Midnight, Mikul said as he helped Aveline mount. He has carried me for 2 centuries. As Mikul swung up behind her, his arms encircling her waist, Ian heard shouts from the castle. Torches blazed to life. Her escape had been discovered. Hold tight, Mikul commanded. The stallion burst from the stables like a shadow given form, hooves sparking on cobblestones. They thundered through the gates just as armed guards rushed to close them. An arrow whistled past Aveline's ear. Behind them, King Edmund emerged onto the battlements, his face twisted with rage and grief. Close the gates. Stop them. But they were already gone, swallowed by the pre-dawn darkness, racing toward a future unknown. As the first fingers of light touched the eastern sky, they reached the forest. Mikhail guided Midnight deep into the trees where ancient oaks blocked out the coming sun. They dismounted in a clearing where darkness still reigned. Aveline's heart pounded, her body trembling with adrenaline and fear and exhilaration. "We did it," she breathed. Mikhail turned to her, his eyes glowing in the gloom. "We have crossed a threshold, Aline. There is no going back, I know." He pulled her close, and for the first time he kissed her. His lips were cold, but the kiss burned with 500 years of loneliness, finally finding its end. When they broke apart, the sun was rising somewhere beyond the forest canopy. But here, in the darkness, a new day was beginning, a day that belonged to them. They traveled for 3 nights, always moving under cover of darkness, sleeping during the daylight hours in caves, abandoned ruins, and once in an old burial crypt that made Avel's skin crawl until Mikul explained that the dead posed no threat. Only the living did. Mikul taught her the ways of survival in his world, how to move silently through darkness, how to read the night sounds, the warning call of an owl, the sudden silence that meant predators nearby, how to hide from those who would hunt them. "Your father will have sent riders," he explained on their second night as they rested in a shepherd's abandoned hut. "The church will mobilize its hunters. They have methods, blessed weapons, holy relics, ancient knowledge passed down through generations of vampire slayers." "How many have you faced?" Ian asked, huddled in his cloak for warmth. "Too many to count." His eyes grew distant. "The church has an entire order dedicated to destroying my kind, the Brotherhood of the Silver Dawn. They are relentless, well-trained, and absolutely convinced they serve God's will." He touched the silver wolf brooch on his chest. This was taken from one of them. A reminder that even monsters can triumph over righteousness. "You're not a monster," Aline said softly. "I have been Aline many times." His voice was heavy. "I have killed men who were only protecting their families. I have fed on innocence, the hunger." He closed his eyes. "The hunger is a beast that never truly sleeps." "When did you last feed?" The question hung in the air between them. Mikul opened his eyes, and in them she saw the predator lurking beneath the gentleman's mask. "The night before the harvest bowl, I drained a criminal in the dungeons of a town 2 days' ride from your castle. Your father's captain had already sentenced him to hang for murder." His jaw tightened. "I tell myself it matters that I choose the guilty when I can, but blood is blood, and the beast inside doesn't care about justice." Ian reached out and took his cold hand. "You must be hungry now." "I am managing. How long can you go without feeding?" "Weeks if necessary. But I grow weaker, slower, more vulnerable." He squeezed her hand gently. "Do not fear for me, princess. I have survived far worse." On their 4th night, they reached the borders of Witchwood Forest, an ancient wilderness that stretched for 100 miles, where the trees grew so thick that even noon felt like twilight. Local legends spoke of it as a cursed place where travelers vanished and strange lights danced between the trees. "We're close," Mikul said as Midnight picked his way through undergrowth. "The sanctuary lies at the heart of Witchwood. Few humans know it exists, and fewer still would dare approach." "What is this sanctuary?" Ian asked, her arms wrapped around his waist as they rode. "A refuge, a place built centuries ago by the oldest of my kind, those who grew weary of war and hunting, who sought to live in peace rather than conquest." His voice carried a note of reverence. "It is ruled by the Covenant, a council of ancient vampires who enforce laws among our kind. They forbid the turning of humans without consent, the killing of children, the exposure of our existence. Those who break these laws are destroyed. Your kind has laws, we must. Without them, we would be nothing but beasts, and humanity would unite to exterminate us entirely." He guided midnight around a fallen tree. The Covenant maintains the balance. They are not kind, but they are just in their way. As they penetrated deeper into Witchwood, the forest changed. The trees grew taller, older, their trunks wider than houses. Spanish moss hung like funeral shrouds. Strange fungi glowed with phosphorescent light, illuminating the path in shades of green and blue. The air grew colder, thick with mist that clung to everything. Aveline saw eyes watching from the darkness, not animal eyes, but something older, more intelligent. Shapes moved between the trees, keeping pace with them but never approaching. "Do not be afraid," Miguel murmured. "They are guardians. They sense you are with me." Finally, they emerged into a clearing where the mist parted to reveal something impossible. A castle rose from the forest floor, not the greystone of English fortifications, but something older, darker. Its towers were black as midnight, carved from some stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Windows glowed with warm light from within, and smoke curled from chimneys, suggesting life despite the deathly stillness. "Welcome," Mael said quietly, to Raven's home, the heart of the sanctuary. As they approached the main gates, they swung open silently. A figure emerged, a woman of startling beauty with pale skin, raven black hair that fell to her waist, and eyes that glowed amber like a cat's. She wore a gown of deep purple velvet, medieval in style, and moved with the same predatory grace as Mikey. Mikhail Vyulov. Her voice was musical with an accent Alain couldn't place. "You returned to us after how long? 50 years. 63. Lady Isidora." Mikhail dismounted and helped Aveline down. "I come seeking sanctuary for myself and my companion." Isidora's glowing eyes fixed on Alain with unnerving intensity. "You bring a human into Raven's home. How bold and foolish." She moved closer, circling Aveline like a predator assessing prey. "She carries your scent. You have marked her without turning her." "Curious." "She is under my protection," Mikhail said firmly, moving to stand beside Aveline. "I invoke the law of sanctuary. And if the Covenant denies your claim, then we leave and seek refuge elsewhere." Isidora laughed, a sound like crystal shattering. "You always were stubborn, Mikhail. Very well, come inside. The Covenant will want to hear your tale." Her eyes lingered on Aline and to examine this human who has captured the heart of the great Lord Vyulov. They entered the castle and Aline's breath caught. The interior was magnificent. All soaring ceilings, rich tapestries, and furniture that spoke of centuries of accumulated wealth. But it was also wrong somehow. The shadows were too deep. The angle seemed slightly off, and everywhere she felt the weight of ancient eyes watching. Other vampires emerged from doorways and corridors. Men and women of impossible beauty, their eyes glowing in various colors, amber, red, silver, green. Some wore medieval garb, others clothing from Ares Aval didn't recognize. All moved with that same inhuman grace. "How many live here?" Aline whispered. "Perhaps 200, Mikhail replied. "The oldest members of the Covenant have existed for over 2,000 years. They remember Rome's fall, the birth of Christianity, empires that turned to dust. They were led to a great hall where a long table had been set. At its head sat 3 figures who radiated power that made even Isidora seem diminished. The center figure was a man who appeared to be in his 40s with silver hair and eyes that burned like molten gold. He wore robes of deep crimson and a crown of blackened silver shaped like thorns. Lord Cassius, Mikhail bowed deeply. "Eldest of the Covenant, I seek audience." Mikhail Vyulov, Cases's voice was ancient, carrying the weight of millennia. "We heard rumors of your involvement with human royalty. Foolish even for one as old as you." His golden eyes fixed on Aveline. "And you brought her here to the heart of our world." "I had no choice, my lord. We are hunted by the Church's brotherhood. Her father, King Edmund of Elder Gate, has declared us both enemies of the realm." The figure to Cases's right, a woman with skin dark as ebony and eyes like silver moons, leaned forward. "You risk exposing us all for the sake of one human girl." "She is more than that, Lady Nefara," Mael said quietly. "She is my bloodmate." Shocked silence fell over the hall. Even Isidora gasped. "Bloodmate?" Cassius rose from his throne, his power rolling through the room like thunder. "You claim the ancient bond, the soul tie that has not manifested in over 500 years. "I do." The third member of the Covenant, a pale youth who looked no older than 16 but whose eyes held eons, spoke for the first time. "Such claims must be proven." The ritual of resonance will show truth or lies. I accept the ritual, Miguel said without hesitation. Aveline grabbed his arm. What ritual? What are they talking about? A test, Mael explained quietly. They will use ancient magic to determine if what I claim is true. If our souls are truly bound, if I'm wrong or lying, the magic will destroy me. And if you're right, then you will be recognized as my consort, protected by covenant law. No vampire may harm you or turn you without my permission. But what does blood made mean? Mael turned to face her fully, his ice-blue eyes holding hers. It means that in 500 years of existence across thousands of humans I have met, your soul calls to mine. It means that the universe, God, fate, whatever power governs such things, has decreed that we are meant to be together, two halves of one whole. He touched her face gently. It means I would burn in holy fire for you. It means I would walk into sunlight. It means that if you die, part of me dies with you. Tears filled Ian's eyes. How do you know? Because for 500 years I felt nothing. No joy, no hope, no light, only endless darkness and the mechanical pursuit of survival. Then I saw you across that ballroom, and for the first time since my heart stopped beating in 789. I felt it stir. He placed her hand over his chest. Can you feel it? That faint flutter that shouldn't exist. I am dead. Davine. But near you I almost live. She could feel it. The slow, impossible rhythm beneath his cold skin. Begin the ritual. Cases commanded. Isadora and two other vampires brought forth an ancient bowl carved from black stone decorated with silver runes that hurt to look at. They placed it on the table and filled it with a dark liquid that steamed despite the cool air. This is blood from the first mother, Cases explained. The original vampire from whom all our lines descend. It has power beyond modern understanding. He gestured to Kael. If you are truly blood, when you both drink, the bond will manifest. You will see into each other's souls, feel each other's pain and joy, be connected across any distance. And if we're not, Avine asked, then the blood will reject the lie. Kael will burn from the inside, and you will be changed, turned against your will, forever trapped between life and death. Ian looked at Kael. His expression was calm, certain. I trust you, she said simply. They approached the bowl together. Kael drank first, his throat working as he swallowed the ancient blood. Then he stepped back and Aline lifted the bowl to her lips. The blood was cold, thick, and tasted of copper and darkness and something else, something that made her think of starlight and eternity. She swallowed once, twice, 3 times. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into light and sensation. She felt Mikhail's emotions crash into her like a wave. 500 years of loneliness, grief, guilt, and self-hatred, but also the fierce, desperate love he felt for her. She saw his memories flash past, his human life, the woman who turned him. Centuries of blood and darkness. The moment he first saw Aveline and felt his dead heart stutter, and he felt her trapped childhood, her suffocating duty, her desperate hunger for freedom, and the instant irrational love she had felt when their eyes met across the ballroom. Their souls recognized each other, called to each other, completed each other. When the vision faded, Aveline found herself in Mael's arms. Both of them on their knees, both trembling. Around them, the assembled vampires stared in awe. The bond is true, Cassius said, his ancient voice filled with wonder. After 5 centuries, the blood-mate bond lives again. Lady Nefara smiled, a predatory, satisfied expression. Then they are under covenant protection. Let the word go forth. The human Avichester is bonded to Mikhail Vyulov. Any who harm her answer to us. As Mikhail helped Aveline to her feet, she felt the bond thrumming between them. A golden thread connecting their souls across the small distance separating their bodies. What happens now? She whispered. Now, Miguel said softly. We begin our life together, in darkness but together. Outside, dawn was breaking over Witchwood Forest. But in Raven's home, night was eternal, and Aveline had never felt more alive. The days, or rather nights, that followed were a revelation for Aline. She was given chambers in the western tower of Raven's home, rooms decorated with luxuries she had never known, even in her father's castle. Rich tapestries from Byzantium, furniture carved from rare woods, a bed draped in silks that felt like water against her skin. But the true luxury was freedom. For the first time in her life, no one told her where to go, what to wear, whom to speak with. No prayers at dawn, no embroidery lessons, no diplomatic smiles at tedious banquets. She could read forbidden books from the castle's ancient library, practice sword fighting with Isidadora in the training yard, or simply sit with Kael in comfortable silence as he taught her about his world. The transformation from human to vampire is not instantaneous. He explained one evening as they sat in the library, surrounded by books that predated the printing press. It requires 3 exchanges of blood over 3 nights. The first exchange creates a connection. You would feel my emotions share my strength to some degree. The second deepens the bond, making you harder to kill, slowing your aging. The third, he paused, his ice blue eyes meeting hers. The third completes the transformation. Your heart stops. You die. And 3 days later, you claw your way back from death as something new, something immortal, Ian said quietly. Something cursed. Mikul corrected. Never forget what we are, Aline. We are beautiful monsters, predators wearing human faces. The hunger is constant, demanding, merciless. I have seen newly turned vampires lose themselves to bloodlust, slaughtering entire villages before the Covenant tracked them down and executed them. But you have control because I am old, because I have had 5 centuries to master the beast inside me. His hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. But even now, when you are close, I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell the blood flowing through your veins. Every instinct I possess screams at me to feed, to drain you dry, to take what the predator in me craves. Ian reached across the small distance between them and took his cold hand. Yet you don't, because I love you more than I hunger. But that makes me rare among my kind, Aveline. Most vampires see humans as cattle, as food, as toys to play with and discard. His eyes reflected candle light like mirrors. If you choose this life, truly choose it, you must understand that you will outlive everything. Everyone you ever knew will age and die while you remain unchanged. You will watch empires rise and fall. You will see the world transform in ways you cannot imagine, and through it all you will hunger. Tell me about the hunger. Ian said, I need to understand. Mikul was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Imagine the worst thirst you have ever known. Now multiply it by 1,000 and let it consume every thought, every moment. The hunger is not just physical. It is spiritual, emotional, existential. It whispers in your mind constantly, telling you that humans are beneath you, that their lives are brief and meaningless, that taking their blood is no different than eating meat. He closed his eyes. It tells you that you are a god and they are insects to be crushed. How do you resist? By remembering what I was, by holding on to the humanity I lost. His eyes opened, focusing on her with painful intensity. By having someone worth being better for. Over the following weeks, Alan learned more about the sanctuary and its inhabitants. She met Marcos, a Roman centurion turned vampire during the reign of Nero, who taught her Latin and told her stories of ancient Rome. She befriended Yuki, a Japanese vampire from the Heian period who moved like silk and fought like lightning. She even earned grudging respect from Lady Nephara, who had been a queen in Egypt 3,000 years before Christ. But not everyone welcomed her presence. She is a liability, growled Lord Draven, a Viking warrior turned vampire who led the sanctuary's defenses. He confronted Miguel in the Great Hall one evening, his red eyes blazing with anger. Word has spread that we harbor a human. The Brotherhood will come for her, and they will destroy Raven's home to get to her. The Brotherhood has tried to find this place for 500 years, Mikhail replied calmly. Our wards and protections have held, because we remained hidden, because we did not draw attention. Draven slammed his fist on the table, cracking the ancient wood. But you brought a princess here, the daughter of a king who now hunts us with religious fervor. King Edmund has offered a fortune in gold to anyone who provides information about vampire nests. He is allied with the church. Even now, the Brotherhood masses in villages around Witchwood Forest, searching for our location. Then we defend our home, Mikhail said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. As we always have. Or Draven stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. We give them what they want. 1 human girl in exchange for the safety of 200 vampires. It is simple mathematics. Mail moved so fast Ian didn't see it. One moment he was standing calmly, the next he had Draven pinned against the wall by his throat. Fangs extended, eyes blazing with predatory fury. Touch her, Mikhail hissed. And I will show you why they called me the Beast of Brinsmere. I will tear you apart so thoroughly that even vampire regeneration cannot save you. Enough. Cassius's voice thundered through the hall, carrying power that made even Mael step back. The eldest vampire descended from his throne, his golden eyes blazing. Lord Draven raises valid concerns even if his solution is unacceptable. The human her name is Aveline. Mael interrupted a breach of protocol that made the assembled vampires gasp. The human Aveline Cassius continued, his voice sharp as broken glass has brought danger to our sanctuary. This cannot be denied. However, she is also Mikael's acknowledged bloodmate, which makes her sacred under covenant law. He turned his ancient gaze to Aveline. But perhaps it is time we ask the lady herself what she desires. You have lived among us for 6 weeks now. You have seen what we are. You have learned our ways. Do you wish to remain human, Alland North Dorchester, or do you choose to walk the path of darkness? Every vampire in the hall turned to look at her. Ian felt the weight of their gazes, centuries and millennia of accumulated power and experience, all focused on her decision. She rose from her seat, her heart pounding but her voice steady. I have a question first, if I may. Speak. Cassius commanded. If I become vampire, will I lose myself? Will I become a monster who cares nothing for human life? You will become what you are, Lady Nephara said from her seed. The transformation amplifies what exists within you. Those who were cruel as humans become demons as vampires. Those who were kind, she paused, find the struggle more difficult but are not necessarily consumed by darkness. You will hunger, added Marcos gently. That cannot be avoided, but you will also have eternity to learn control, and you will have Mikael to guide you. Aveline looked at Mikael, standing tense and ready to defend her against his own kind. Through their bond, she felt his emotions, fear for her safety, desperate hope that she would choose immortality with him, but also willingness to accept whatever decision she made. I choose transformation, Aveline said clearly. I choose to become vampire. You understand what you are giving up, Cassius pressed. Sunlight, warm food, the ability to have children, the chance to age naturally and die peacefully. All of this you surrender forever. I understand and I choose this freely. Mikael crossed to her in 2 strides and took her hands. His ice-cold fingers trembled slightly. Are you certain? Once we begin the 3 exchanges, there is no going back. I am certain, Aline said, and she meant it. I have been dead my entire life, Mikael, trapped in a golden cage, living someone else's dream. With you in darkness, I finally feel alive. I would rather have eternity in the shadows than another day in the suffocating light of duty. Then it shall be done, Cass declared. The transformation will begin tonight. Mikael Vilov, do you accept the responsibility of sire? Will you guide this fledgling through her death and rebirth? Will you answer for her crimes and control her bloodlust until she has mastered herself? I accept, Mael said solemnly. On my honor and my life. Then take her to the transformation chamber. Lady Isidora will prepare the ritual. The transformation chamber was deep beneath Raven's home, carved into living rock. Ancient runes covered every surface, glowing with pale blue light. A stone altar stood at the center, surrounded by candles that burned with black flames. Isidora waited there along with Yuki and Marcos. We will witness the transformation, Isidora explained to Aveline. The first exchange is the most dangerous. If your body rejects Mikael's blood, you will die. Truly die with no chance of resurrection. What are the odds of rejection? Ian asked. For a bloodmate, Isidora's smile was reassuring. Nearly impossible. Your souls are already bound. Your body will recognize what your spirit already knows. Mikael led Ian to the altar. She lay down on the cold stone, her black curls spreading around her like a dark halo. Above her, the vaulted ceiling was painted with a vast fresco depicting the first mother, the original vampire, a woman of terrible beauty with eyes like stars. Are you afraid? Mikael asked softly, brushing a curl from her face. Terrified, Aveline admitted, but also eager. Is that strange? No, it means you are ready. He knelt beside the altar, taking her hand. The first exchange requires that I drink from you first. Not enough to kill, but enough to weaken you, to prepare your body for what comes next. Then you will drink from me. My blood will mix with yours, beginning the transformation. Will it hurt? Yes, he said honestly, but I will be as gentle as I can. Avi nodded, tilting her head to expose her neck, her pulse hammered visibly beneath pale skin. Mael leaned over her, his golden hair catching the candle light. His fangs extended fully, longer than she had seen them before, sharp as daggers. His eyes blazed with hunger barely controlled. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you," he replied, "forever and always." Then his fangs pierced her throat. The pain was sharp and bright, but it faded quickly into something else, something that felt like warmth spreading through her veins. She felt Kael drinking, felt her blood flowing into him, felt the intimacy of it in a way she hadn't expected. This was more than feeding. This was communion, connection, the joining of two souls through the most primal act. When he pulled back, his lips were stained crimson. His eyes glowed like ice lit from within. He looked wild, dangerous, beautiful. "Now you," he said, his voice rough with barely controlled hunger. He used his fangs to open a vein in his wrist. Dark blood, almost black in the candle light, welled up. He held his wrist to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. Aveline hesitated only a moment before pressing her mouth to his wound. The blood was cold, thick, and tasted of copper and darkness, and something indescribable, something ancient and powerful that made every nerve in her body sing. She drank deeply, feeling the vampire blood mix with her own, feeling it race through her veins like liquid fire and ice combined. Her vision sharpened, her hearing amplified. She could hear the heartbeats of the witnesses, hear Michael's slow, rare pulse, hear the rustle of bat wings in the caves far above. When she finally pulled back, gasping, the world had changed. Colors were more vivid, shadows held definition, and she could feel Mikhail's emotions as clearly as her own. His relief, his joy, his lingering hunger, his overwhelming love. "The first exchange is complete," Isadora announced. "How do you feel, little princess?" Aveline sat up slowly. Her body felt strange, stronger, lighter, more alive than ever before, despite the weakness from blood loss. "I feel," she paused, searching for words. "I feel like I'm waking up for the first time." Mikhail smiled. And in that moment, Aveline knew she had made the right choice. Whatever came next, the remaining exchanges, the final death, the rebirth as vampire, she would face it with him. In 2 nights, she would drink again. In 4 nights, she would complete her transformation. And in 6 nights, she would die and be reborn. But tonight, she was still human, still warm, still bridging the gap between 2 worlds. And she had never felt more alive. The second exchange came 2 nights later, and with it a profound shift in Aveline's being. The ritual was performed in the same chamber. But this time, when Mikhail's blood entered her system, she felt her very essence begin to change. Her heartbeat slowed, not stopped, but became languid, irregular, as if her body was already beginning to forget what it meant to be human. "Your skin is cooler," Mikhail observed afterward, touching her cheek with wonder. "And your eyes, there are flecks of amber light in them now. The transformation has begun in earnest." Aveline looked at her reflection in the polished silver mirror Isadora provided. She was right. Her amber eyes now held tiny points of luminescence like fireflies trapped in honey. Her skin had taken on a slight pallor, making her black curls appear even darker by contrast. "I can hear things," Aveline whispered, tilting her head. "Conversations happening 3 floors above us. The wind moving through the forest outside, the scratch of pen on parchment in the library." She turned to Mikhail, wonder in her voice. "Is this what you experience constantly? That and more. After the 3rd exchange, your senses will sharpen even further. You will hear heartbeats from 100 paces, smell blood through stone walls, see in complete darkness as clearly as humans see in daylight." He pulled her close, his cold arms encircling her. "But you will also feel the hunger. Are you prepared for that? With you guiding me?" Yes. They returned to the upper levels of Raven's home where a celebration had been prepared. The vampires had grown fond of Avine over the weeks. Her courage, her quick wit, her refusal to be intimidated by creatures who could tear her apart without effort. Even Lord Draven had softened slightly, though he still watched her with weary red eyes. The feast was a strange affair. Platters of food that the vampires couldn't eat, but provided for Avel's benefit. Alongside crystal decanters of blood from various sources, Avel had learned not to ask too many questions about the blood's origin. The Covenant had arrangements with hospitals, battlefields, and willing human donors who lived in villages on Witchwood's outskirts. "Tomorrow night will be your final exchange," Lady Nephara said, raising a goblet in toast. "And 3 nights hence you will rise as one of us. A momentous occasion. The first transformation in Raven's home in over 50 years," added Marcus. He stopped abruptly, his head jerking toward the eastern wall. His expression shifted from celebratory to deadly serious in an instant. "What is it?" Cassius demanded, rising from his throne. "The wards," Marcus said quietly. "Someone is testing them." Every vampire in the hall went utterly still, their predatory instincts engaged. Aline felt it too, a disturbance in the air like the pressure before a storm. Lord Draven was already moving toward the armory. How many? Difficult to say. The wards are holding, but Marcus' eyes widened. They're using holy water, blessed silver. They know what we are, the Brotherhood. Kael breathed, his hand instinctively moving to his sword. They found us. Cassius's golden eyes blazed with ancient fury. Impossible. Our protections have held for 5 centuries. No one can find Raven's home unless we allow it. Unless, Isadora said slowly, her face pale, even for a vampire. Unless they had help from inside. All eyes turned to the shadows at the back of the hall where a figure emerged. It was Thomas, a relatively young vampire, only 200 years old, who had been turned during the Crusades. His face was twisted with guilt and fear. "I'm sorry," Thomas whispered. "They caught my sister, my human sister, who I thought had died decades ago. But she lived, married, had children. The Brotherhood found her, found out what I was. They said they would burn her and her children alive unless I led them here." "You betrayed us." Draven snarled, crossing the hall in a blur of motion. He grabbed Thomas by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You betrayed 200 vampires to save 1 human." "She's my sister," Thomas choked out. "Enough," Cassius commanded. "The damage is done. Thomas will answer for his treachery after we survive this night. Draven, prepare the defenses. Marcos, gather the warriors. Isadora." He turned to the dark-haired vampire. "Take the non-combatants to the deep vaults. They cannot breach those, even with holy weapons." "I'm not hiding," Aline said, stepping forward. "I can fight." "You are still half human," Kael said urgently. "1 wound from a blessed blade will kill you. You must go to the vault." "No." Ian's voice carried unexpected steel. "This is my fault. The Brotherhood came here because of me, because I ran away with you. I won't cower while others die defending me." Before Mikul could argue, the eastern wall exploded. Stone and mortar blasted inward as holy fire, bright as sunlight, tore through the ancient defenses. Vampires screamed as the light touched them, their flesh smoking and burning. Aveline threw up her hand to shield her eyes from the terrible brightness. Through the breach poured men in white robes bearing silver crosses and swords that gleamed with holy oil. At their head was a figure Ian recognized with a jolt of horror. Father Dominic, the exorcist her father had summoned to Dorchester Castle. "In the name of God and the Holy Church," Father Dominic's voice boomed through the hall. "We have come to cleanse this nest of demons. Surrender the girl and the rest of you may flee into whatever darkness spawned you." "Never." Male roared, drawing his sword, a blade of folded steel that had seen 500 years of battle. The Brotherhood charged. What followed was carnage. The vampires were faster, stronger, and nearly immortal, but the Brotherhood warriors were trained, fanatical, and armed with weapons specifically designed to kill the undead. Silver blades that burned like acid, holy water that ate through vampire flesh like fire, stakes carved from wood blessed by popes and soaked in holy oil. Avel watched in horror as Lord Draven tore through 3 Brotherhood warriors with his bare hands, only to be caught by a silver net that seared his flesh. He roared in agony as Father Dominic himself drove a blessed stake through his heart. The ancient Viking vampire crumbled to ash, his red eyes fading to nothing. "No!" Avine screamed. Kael fought like the demon the Brotherhood believed him to be. A whirlwind of blade and fury, cutting down attackers with surgical precision, but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. Young vampires fell to blessed weapons. The hall became a battlefield of ash and blood. "Aveline, run." Miguel shouted as 3 Brotherhood warriors surrounded him. But Aveline didn't run. Something inside her, some primal instinct, awakened by the second exchange, took over. She grabbed a fallen sword and launched herself at the nearest warrior, threatening Kael. She was clumsy, untrained, but she had surprise on her side. Her blade caught the warrior across the back of his knee, bringing him down. Kael used the opening to dispatch his other attackers. "I told you to run," he said, but there was pride in his voice. "And I told you I can fight." They fought back to back. Male's 500 years of experience compensating for Aline's inexperience. Around them, the battle raged. Marcus held the western flank, his Roman training evident in every calculated strike. Lady Nephara fought with ancient Egyptian magic, causing Brotherhood warriors to collapse as their blood boiled in their veins. Yuki moved like smoke, her blade finding throats before her enemies even saw her. But the Brotherhood kept coming. Wave after wave, an army of zealots willing to die to destroy the vampire nest. Father Dominic raised a silver cross above his head. "Hear me, demons. I speak with the authority of Rome. I command you in the name of Christ." Whatever he was about to say died on his lips as cases appeared before him, moving so fast he seemed to teleport. The eldest vampire's golden eyes blazed with fury that predated Christianity itself. "I was old when your Christ was crucified," Cashacer said softly, his voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "I walked under Egyptian stars when Rome was nothing but shepherds' huts. Your symbols hold no power over me, priest." He reached out and grasped the silver cross. His hands sizzled and burned, smoke rising from his palm. But he didn't let go. With contemptuous ease, he crushed the holy symbol to twisted metal. Father Dominic's eyes widened in terror. Impossible. Nothing is impossible to those who have eternity to learn. Cassius leaned close. "Tell your church that Raven's home is under my protection. Tell them that any who attack us again will face the wrath of one who watched their faith be born and can watch it die." He released the priest with a dismissive gesture that sent Father Dominic flying backward through the breach in the wall. "Retreat." The priest screamed to his surviving warriors. "Fall back, fall back." The Brotherhood fled into the forest, dragging their wounded and leaving their dead behind. In moments, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by eerie silence. Evie looked around at the devastation. The great hall was ruined, walls shattered, tapestries burning, ancient stonework cracked. Piles of ash marked where vampires had fallen. Perhaps 20 had died, including Lord Draven and several others Aveline had come to know. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice shaking. For now, Miguel said grimly, he was wounded. A cut across his chest from a blessed blade that was healing more slowly than normal. "But they know where we are now. They'll return with more warriors, more weapons. Then we must leave," Cassius said, surveying the damage with ancient eyes. "Raven's home has been compromised. We will scatter as we did 500 years ago when the last sanctuary fell." He turned his gaze to Mikhail and Aveline, "And you will complete her transformation elsewhere. The Brotherhood will focus their hunt on you above all others." "Where do we go?" Ian asked. "Brinsmere," Mikhail said after a moment. "My fortress in the east. It's remote, heavily fortified, and I know every secret passage and hidden chamber. We can defend it if necessary. Then that is where you shall go." Cassius approached them, his burnt hand already healing. "Complete her transformation there. When she rises as vampire, send word. The Covenant will endure even if Raven's home falls. We always do." Lady Nephara appeared beside them, her dark skin smudged with ash. "I will accompany you. You'll need help protecting her during the vulnerable period after her death." "As will I," added Yuki, cleaning blood from her blade. "And I," rumbled Marcus. Mikhail looked at his old friends, vampires he had known for centuries, and nodded gratefully. "We leave within the hour." As they prepared to depart, Aline looked back at Raven's home. The sanctuary that had become her home, now broken and burning. She felt the weight of guilt pressing on her chest. "This is my fault," she whispered. Mikhail took her hand. "No, this is the price of our existence. We have always been hunted. We always will be, but we endure." He squeezed her cold fingers gently. "And now, so will you." They rode out as the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky, racing toward Brinsmere and Aveline's final transformation. Behind them, the vampires of Raven's home began the work of rebuilding, as they had done countless times before, as they would do countless times again. Because that was the truth of immortality. Everything ends, everything rebuilds, everything endures. And in 3 nights, Aline would understand that truth in her very bones. Or rather, in the absence of bones, in the cold emptiness where life used to be, in the eternal hunger that would define her forever. The journey to Brinsmere took 5 nights of hard riding through territories that grew progressively colder and more desolate. They traveled through the Carpathian Mountains, where ancient forests gave way to rocky passes and villages that looked abandoned even when people still lived in them. The locals crossed themselves when the travelers passed, muttering prayers in languages older than English. "They know what I am," Mikul explained as they rode through one such village under cover of darkness. "These lands remember the old ways. They leave offerings of blood at crossroads to appease us. They paint protective symbols on their doors. They survive by acknowledging our existence rather than denying it." Brinsmere itself was a fortress that seemed carved from the mountain itself, blackstone walls rising from sheer cliffs, towers that disappeared into perpetual mist, a single bridge across a chasm so deep that Aveline couldn't see the bottom, even with her enhanced vision. It looked like something from a nightmare, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. "Welcome to my true home," Kael said as they crossed the bridge. "I built this place 300 years ago when I finally tired of wandering. Every stone was placed by these hands, every defense designed by a mind that had seen empires fall." Inside, the fortress was surprisingly elegant, a stark contrast to its forbidding exterior. Rich tapestries depicting Russian folklore covered the walls. Furniture carved from dark wood filled rooms lit by hundreds of candles and everywhere books. Thousands of volumes in dozens of languages representing 500 years of accumulated knowledge. "The third exchange must happen tonight," Lady Nefara said as they settled in the great hall. "The moon is dark, which is auspicious, and we dare not delay further. The Brotherhood will be tracking us." Aveline felt her stomach clench with anticipation and fear. After tonight, there would be no going back. She would drink Miguel's blood for the final time. And then death. 3 days of death. Her body cold and still in a tomb while the transformation completed itself on some cellular level she couldn't comprehend. And then rebirth, clawing her way back to consciousness as something new, something eternal, something hungry. "Are you ready?" Miguel asked, taking her hands. Through their bond, she felt his emotions, fear for her, hope that she would survive the transformation. And underneath it all, a grief he tried to hide. Grief for the human life she was about to surrender. "I'm ready," Aline said, and meant it. "I chose this. I want this." They descended to the crypts beneath Brinsmere, ancient chambers carved from living rock where the temperature never rose above freezing. At the center of the largest crypt stood a stone sarcophagus, its lid carved with the image of a beautiful woman whose face resembled Aline's own. "I had this made 200 years ago," Mikul admitted quietly. "I didn't know why at the time. I told myself it was for storage, for defense. But I think some part of me knew that one day I would find you. Knew that I would need a place for your transformation." Aveline traced the carved features of her stone twin. "It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as you will be when you rise." They performed the final exchange at midnight with Lady Nefa, Yuki, and Marcus as witnesses. Aveline lay in the sarcophagus, her black curls spread around her like a dark halo, just as they had been during the first exchange. But everything was different now. This was the end and the beginning. Mael knelt beside the sarcophagus, his ice blue eyes blazing with barely controlled emotion. "After you drink, your heart will stop within minutes. Your breathing will cease to all appearances. You will be dead. And you will be death is not a metaphor in our transformation. You will be truly completely dead for 3 days and then you wake. The hunger will be overwhelming, worse than anything you can imagine. You will need to feed immediately or the bloodlust will consume you entirely." His hand trembled as he touched her face. "I will be here. I won't leave you. Not for a moment. I will guide you through it. I trust you," Aline whispered. For the last time, Kael opened a vein in his wrist. The dark blood, almost black, welled up, and Aveline noticed it seemed thicker now, more potent. She understood why this was the final exchange, the killing dose, the amount necessary to complete the transformation. She pressed her lips to his wound and drank. The blood burned like liquid fire going down, searing through her veins with an intensity that made the previous exchanges seemed gentle by comparison. She felt her heart begin to race faster, faster, desperately trying to pump blood that was no longer quite blood. Her vision swam, her lungs heaved, and then with a final stuttering beat, her heart stopped. The world went dark. Death was not the void Ian had expected. She was aware, trapped in her own body, conscious but unable to move or breathe or cry out. She felt the cold of the stone beneath her, heard Kael weeping as he closed the lid of the sarcophagus, sensed the days passing through some instinct she couldn't name, and she felt the change. Her body was dying. Yes, but it was also transforming. Her cells were being rewritten at a fundamental level. Her bones were strengthening, becoming dense as steel. Her muscles were restructuring, becoming capable of supernatural strength. Her senses were sharpening to impossible acuity. And her hunger, oh, the hunger was growing. A beast inside her chest where her heart used to beat, demanding blood, screaming for it, promising that blood would make everything right again. On the third day, or what she sensed was the third day, something shifted. Power flooded through her dead limbs. Strength returned to muscles that shouldn't work without a heartbeat. And hunger, hunger, hunger. Ian's eyes snapped open in absolute darkness. She could see perfectly. Every grain of stone in the sarcophagus lit above her, every microscopic imperfection. She could hear everything. Male pacing outside, his rare heartbeat, the whisper of fabric as he moved. She could smell blood, warm living blood from the humans Micule had brought for her first feeding. With a snarl that surprised her with its ferocity, Aveline placed her palms against the stone lid and pushed. The heavy lid, which had taken 3 grown men to position, flew off like it weighed nothing, crashing against the wall and shattering. Avel sat up, her senses overwhelmed by input. Everything was brighter, sharper, more intense. She could see individual dust modes floating in the air, could hear conversations happening in the fortress above, could smell the fear of the humans waiting in the next chamber. Aline. Mikhail's voice cut through the sensory chaos. He stood at the entrance to the crypt, his ice-blue eyes glowing in the darkness. Look at me. Focus on my voice. She turned to him and he drew in a sharp breath. Your eyes, he whispered, they're blazing amber like captured sunlight. Aveline looked down at her hands, pale now, luminescent, strong. She could see the veins beneath her skin, but no blood flowed through them. Her heart was utterly still. She wasn't breathing, didn't need to breathe. The hunger, she gasped, and her voice was different, richer, more resonant. Mikhail, I can't, I know, come. He extended his hand. Your first feeding awaits. She moved toward him, and suddenly she was there, having crossed the distance faster than thought. She grabbed his hand, her grip making him WSE despite his supernatural strength. I'm sorry, she said, loosening her grip. I don't know my own strength yet. You will learn. He led her to the next chamber where 3 humans waited. Criminals sentenced to death who had accepted gold for their families in exchange for serving as a fledgling vampire's first meal. The moment Ian saw them, the beast inside her roared. She could hear their hearts pounding, could smell the blood rushing through their veins, could sense the warmth of their living bodies. Every instinct screamed at her to feed, to rip, to tear. Control it, Mikhail commanded, his voice firm. You are not a mindless beast. You are Avelinda Norchester. You are strong enough to choose. She shook with the effort of restraint. How? Remember what I taught you. The hunger never goes away. You simply learn to master it rather than be mastered by it. Breathe. Even though you don't need to, it centers you. Focus on your humanity, on your love, on everything that makes you more than the monster. Avine closed her eyes and thought of everything she had been. The princess in the golden cage, the woman who touched a vampire's cold hand and felt warmth for the first time, the girl who chose freedom over duty. When she opened her eyes, she had control. The hunger was still there, would always be there, but she was stronger. Show me how to feed without becoming a demon, she said. Mail guided her through it. How to pierce the vein cleanly. How to drink enough to satisfy without killing. How to seal the wound afterward so the human survived. It was intimate, primal, and disturbing, but also necessary. When she finally pulled back from her first feeding, her lips stained with blood, she felt power flooding through her. The hunger quieted to a manageable roar, her senses stabilized, and for the first time since waking, she felt like herself. How do you feel? Lady Nefara asked from the doorway where she had been observing. Alive, Aveline said, then laughed at the irony. More alive than I ever felt, with a beating heart. For the following weeks, Aveline learned to navigate her new existence. She trained with Yuki, discovering she could move faster than a striking snake. She studied with Marcus, learning the history of their kind. She practiced control with Lady Nefa, mastering the hunger until it became background noise rather than consuming obsession. And every night, she and Mail grew closer. Their bond deepening now that they were truly equals, truly the same. They could share thoughts across distances, feel each other's emotions, know when the other was in danger. One night, standing on Brinsmere's highest tower and looking out over the moonlit mountains, Aline asked the question that had haunted her. "Do you regret it that I'm no longer human?" Mael pulled her close, his cold body against hers, feeling right in a way warmth never had. "I regret that you had to die to truly live. But no, I don't regret that we have eternity together. I don't regret that you chose this freely. I don't regret that after 500 years of darkness, I found my light, even though your light now lives in darkness." "Perhaps," he said softly. "That's the point. Light and darkness aren't opposites. They're partners. One gives the other meaning. You brought light into my darkness, and I gave you the freedom to shine without burning yourself in service to others' expectations." In the valley below, a church bell tolled midnight. Once that sound would have called Aval to prayer. Now it simply marked another hour in an eternity of hours stretching before her. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We live, we endure, we love." Miguel turned her to face him, his ice-blue eyes meeting her blazing amber ones. "The Brotherhood will hunt us. Your father will never stop searching. The world will change in ways we cannot imagine. I have seen kingdoms rise and fall, religions born and die, empires turn to dust. But through it all, we will have each other forever." Forever. Ian smiled and for the first time felt her fangs extend fully. Once she would have been horrified. Now she simply accepted it as part of what she was. She had been the perfect daughter. Obedient, graceful, trapped. She had fallen in love with a vampire, powerful, ancient, damned. She had chosen transformation, death and rebirth, darkness and freedom. And now she was something new, not princess, not human, not quite monster. She was Aline Vyulov, blood-maid to Kael, vampire of Brinsmere. She was eternal, she was powerful, she was free. And in the darkness that stretched before them, centuries and millennia of nights without end, she had finally found her home. Not in a castle of stone and duty, but in the cold embrace of the creature who loved her enough to let her choose her own damnation. Together they descended from the tower. Two shadows merging into one, two souls bound across eternity. Two hearts that no longer beat, but still remembered what it meant to love. The night welcomed them, and they welcomed it back forever. If you like the story, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me what impressed you most about it. Turn on notifications to always receive updates on future videos.